We laugh. We cry. We learn. But really, what doesn't kill you makes you better at managing clients and everyone. I'm Morgan Friedman, and this is Client Horror Stories.
Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Client Horror Stories. Here from an unusual location in a makeshift studio, and it's my honor and pleasure to have Tamara Adlin with me today. How are you doing, Tamara?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm happy you're doing great because after all the technical difficulties you and I have had for the last little while, I'm I'm going to put myself in a great mood to have an exciting episode with you right now.
We have been victorious. We have conquered the iPhones and
We
the
have
lights and the streams. We are victorious.
we've conquered modern technology.
It's
And
not as easy as it should be.
but
I'm
what's
telling you.
even more complex than modern technology is dealing with this creature called humans.
Yep.
So let's jump in and talk about some challenges dealing with humans. Tamara, I have my coffee in hand with some alcohol, some whiskey inside, and I'm excited to hear your story. Let's go.
You got the whiskey. Okay, well, I'm particularly excited to share these stories because, as you know from talking before this, that after all of these client horror, I've been doing client work for 25 years, and after all these client horror stories, amalgamated into now my approach is totally on early stage alignment of everybody. So this is one of those stories that drove me absolutely crazy. I have done a lot of work over the years for lots of companies and got a bunch of work very early on in the blockchain space. And I'm talking about, well, early on being 2017, 2018, things like that. And I was recommended into these companies by somebody who was an investor. And so that put me in a position of like, oh, hey, she knows what she's doing. You should really listen to her. She'll help you get to a great product faster. And that was the reputation I came in with, which should make everything work pretty well, but it didn't. So let me just name this. Let me just name this company Terrible. I'll call it Terrible. That's the nickname. Terrible Incorporated.
T
So
Inc.
T Inc. This company had a plan to do something called smart contracts and to make it easier for
Okay.
developers to work on those. And the easy way to think about this is that, a document is a document with words and pictures. Well, a smart contract is sort of like a document that has code elements in it, almost like a document with software inside of it. And so that was the big idea, right? And it was going to make it easier for developers to collaborate on these little units of software inside these documents and use them in various documents all over the place. That mental model was important because getting your head around collaborating on something like that is different than collaborating on a document.
Right.
So I got started with them and started trying to untangle. And one of the things that I do most of the time is ask some really hard, very basic questions like, who are you building this for? What do they want and need? How are how are you going to know that it's a slam dunk success? So I started to do all these things. And one of the things I've realized in my career is that when I'm confused, it's a huge signal that something is confusing. Instead of thinking that I'm dumb, which I'm not, I have come to see it as like, if I listen, I am a smart cookie. If I'm confused about it, I am not going to be the only one. And so I lean into my own confusion. And I said to them, what I was trying to do was getting them to like slow down to speed up. And so they wanted to do everything all at once. They wanted
Uh,
to
By the way, I want
create,
to interrupt for a second and go on a mini tangent
of
on
course.
your point about you being confused, that being a strong signal that is confusing. To me, it's incredible, and it's still shocking to this day after decades that how hard it is for people to admit that they're confused. Because I'm like you, I do it all the time. I'm like, guys, this doesn't make sense. I think I'm the stupid one. I think I'm stupid because I don't get it. And that's sort of like my sort of language to be like something is off. And so many times everyone else in the room or in the Slack or wherever pretends no, they get it, but as soon as you start digging in, it actually turns out no one really gets it.
No one does. In fact, I would go deeper than that and say no one knows anything you think they know. No one knows what the business goals are of any company or any project because they set them in one meeting. 2 days later, two important people get together in a room and talk. Something shifts, no one writes it down. And it is political suicide to raise your hand in the next honcho meeting and say, I'm not sure what our goals are. You can't, you like
Or,
just sociologically, politically, organization cannot do that. So by modus ponens, we can deduce the business goals are never clear to anybody. It's not
uh,
possible.
by the way, I love referencing modus tollens, and I think it's great that you pulled out modus ponens.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Modus ponens for the win. So that's my whole thing, right? And I think it was also for women, it can be harder to do this. I wrote books on personas. And the reason I bring that up is because when you live and
Mhm.
breathe a topic like for 4 or 5 years, like I did, and give presentations and tutorials all the time, you realize that there's no question that can throw you. You
Right.
realize that you do hold a position as somebody who knows more than everybody in any room you walk into, unless I was sitting there with Alan Cooper, right, who invented the concept for our field. And when that happens, and you hear a question that doesn't make sense, it's not ego threatening to me to say, I just don't quite understand your question. Because I understand that it's them that's trying to like look good and ask a question to make themselves look good. And I understand that nobody else in the room is going to think less of me if I say, I'm just not sure, or I need time to think about that, or could you clarify the question? It's a moment, though, where your imposter syndrome is sort of murdered by accident by your own knowledge base.
And I think I agree. I think also what happens with me is I now have like superhuman levels of confidence. So as a result, I feel so confident. I can say that like this makes no sense. But like me 20 years ago, when I didn't, I was just be in meetings with like these super genius people. I'd be like scared. Oh my god! I think all these geniuses understand it, but I'm not smart enough. But it really turns out the geniuses were all just fudging it in real time.
Oh, yeah. It's like the professor you had in college who you knew was genius, but you didn't understand a damn thing they said. I mean, that's not really a good professor. And I think part of my field, I came up through the world of user experience, even though now I'm as much of a business strategy. I don't know what the hell I am when I'm going to grow up. But in user
Well, what are
experience,
your business goals?
yes, my own, it's very hard. I do have a persona for my work and stuff, but anyway, that's another story. I came up through the world of computer human interaction and user interface
Yes,
design. And
yes,
fundamentally, that's a role of translation. That's a role of translation between business, technology, and users. And so if you embrace that as the fundamental part of the role, then you say to yourself, if I can't translate this into a language that a user is going to understand, they're going to be confused, and it's not about me
right.
being confused. And you become really good at, yes, you become superhuman at a certain point with confidence. I think I have that too. But the other thing, you can fudge it a little bit and just say, I'm a little confused, and I'm afraid that if I'm confused, others might be as well.
I, I like that verbal trick.
Yeah. And that I need a little more help understanding this so I can explain it to users. Or help me simplify this a little bit, because while your idea is genius and beyond comprehension, even of God's, we need to make it simpler so that regular human beings can at least get started with it. You can throw in any kind of manipulation
But
you want, that
by
that other ego, it's another person's ego that's keeping them from making it clear.
by the way, I have my own set of my phrases to get at the get at the exact same point. And one of my favorite ones to use is, yeah, I get it, but I haven't really internalized it. Do you want to explain it differently and more simply so I can understand it at a deeper level?
Yes. And the other thing I do sometimes is ask them to use different words. So, one of the most powerful things you can do also in my field is to walk in and create a glossary of terms that people use all the time. I
Mm.
guarantee they're not being defined the same way. Guaranteed. You could send out an email and say, there's a short story I have of working with these founders for an intensive on their strategy, and they were doing tools for financial rails for major companies transmitting money to each other. And it turns out that after 2 days, I finally realized that they didn't define the word institutional the same way. Seriously, and I don't know what an institutional investor is, but finally when I realized, wait, how do you define institutional investor? And they kind of were definitely not on track with each other quite, or surprised by what each other said or the level of information. That was the problem. That was it. So we got to the bottom of it through, I was like, use different, like use a word other than institutional and tell me about this. It all comes down to vocabulary.
I I agree. So this was all a big parenthesis on
The story of Terrible Incorporated. Yeah.
on Tink.
So,
We can call it Tink.
Tick.
TINC.
TIC. Okay, so Tick wanted to do this, it was brand new. It was in 2017, 2018. Everybody, if you say the word blockchain, you get money thrown at your face, like in gold bricks. Just like recently, if you say the word AI, you get money thrown at your face in gold bricks. So they were having money thrown at their face. This is young people who have maybe helped launch one product before, certainly never founded a company before, but they're being told that they're geniuses, and they're being told that with money. So they are showing an investor deck, and somebody is saying, based on these 12 slides, I am going to give you $2 million to whatever it is you think. There is no way someone like me, who, by the way, now I'm the oldest person in the room, can come in and say, wait a second, that may not be the best idea. It won't work, right? They've already been validated before they build
Right.
something.
Right.
So that's a challenge. And that's where horror starts for you. I'm sure you've heard that before, that the validation that you get just by getting investors means that you are no longer open to advice, rightly or wrongly.
I agree with that. I would make an abstracted out version of that, which is getting success or signs of success before you've earned it is a major risk factor for like crazy behavior and or bad behavior. So it's not just getting lots of money before you've really earned it and really demonstrated it. It's getting success in lots of other forms. Oh,
I
if you
think that's really smart. There's another company that I worked with that had one founder who had assets beyond imagination. And uh, that didn't work so well for collaborating with a team of inventors. I think you're absolutely right. So everybody was moving so fast with blockchain, and everybody just wanted to be the first to launch something, which we also know is a great way not to be the winner, is to launch something first. All you have to do
yes,
is remind people that before Facebook, there was Friendster and Orkut and MySpace. The first one is
I
not the winner.
remember all of those.
Right? Right. So,
By the way, impressive you remember Orchid
oh yeah,
because I don't think I know anyone outside of Brazil that actually remembers it, while the Brazilians were obsessed with it.
I don't know any Brazilians, so there you have it. Uh, that was the atmosphere I was walking into, and I was walking into that after having 15 years of very successful consulting with some really big name companies, and a whole bunch of really early stage startups in e-commerce and retail. Huge like my success rate was way higher than the 10% everybody asked for out of VCs. And so I walked in on my high horse, and boy did I get knocked off my high horse. And it sent me on a spiral that took me a couple of years to get out of, because they were bringing up objections. And so I'll tell you some of the details, right? So
The heart of the story is what happened to knock you out of your high horse.
I will tell you. So there was a lot of chaos. And then I was like, okay, what piece are you working on right now? And they said, well, we're working on the smart contract as a document itself. And I said, okay, so let's slow down a little bit. And I'm going to redraw it for you and only use the colors black and white and blue. And blue will indicate that this is the link, and black and white will indicate that it's not a link. This is all massive text
Right.
interactions and stuff like that. And like fancy documents as opposed to whiz bang widgets and buttons and things. And I said, let's just untangle this one logical problem at a time. And it's logic problems, right? It's a bunch of if then statements like, are you allowed to change this? Are you not? Which version do you have? Blah, blah, blah. They loved it. It rejuvenated the entire that page. So I was like, this is great. Now they know they were willing to do this with me. So now they'll be ready to do the whole thing right. And that was a Hail Mary. Immediately after that, here are some of the things that I got told or asked for. What I got asked for, what I said, and then what I got told. They said once we were done with that, okay, in the next sprint, we want you to design the navigation for the site and the system. And I said, what? And they said all of the links, all of the drop downs, everything. And I said to them, there isn't a system yet. We don't know. And the analogy I made is you guys are building a skyscraper. We have kind of dug the foundation. We know where it's going to be. And you're asking me for what names to put on the elevator buttons. You're asking me which floor Dr. Menendez is. Like I can't. And they said, well, can't you just take a stab at it? And I said, no. And then they said, we're just going to copy the UI of Google Drive. To which so we get in so in UX, up until this time, there had been this additive process of people getting it. And so it wasn't since like 2000, 2001 that I had to explain you couldn't just use somebody else's UX, like you wouldn't want to use their underwear. Like it's theirs. And Jared Spool has a great joke, which is Google Drive makes it easy to find anything Google makes it easy to find anything unless it's stored in Google Drive. Kind of ruined that joke. So I said, you can't do that because you have software inside of documents. And the software are the pieces. I'm getting this slightly wrong. It's not technically exactly, but it's close enough. They're inside. Google is built to have a document that you can change the content of, but it doesn't have software running within each document that can also be shared and edited, kind of like Figma. You just can't. And their answer to me was, you are really frustrating us. You are slowing us down. And we've talked amongst the team, and we're just going to add another button right here to put you in a different mode. And I was like, I couldn't even respond. The way I explained it to my colleagues was like, they are being stupid in a way that people haven't been stupid since the early 2000s. And I don't remember how I argued these points. And I don't want to, right? But then I saw it as my problem because I was senior enough to know that if people don't understand me, that it's I'm not being usable. So
Right.
I tried to make myself more usable to them. And the more I tried, the more comments that I got that were misogynistic, that were ageist, that were condescending, and basically they said, so I would say something like, okay, let me try it this way. Can we at least get the nouns and the verbs written down on paper? Like, what are the things and what can you do to the things? And they said, that's not the way we build technology and blockchain. You don't understand the technology.
Wow. Okay, so let's pause in this because
Sure.
you said a whole bunch of things that I
Yeah.
think are very interesting to unwrap with some powerful implications. First, it seems like you reach this point where there's this deep disagreement. Like for the UI, they just wanted to copy paste the Google Docs UI, and you're
Mhm.
like, dude, it's just no possible way this could work for Tink because it's such a different type of product than Google Docs. Something
It was
interesting
hard
is
for me to explain why, by the way, because it was so obvious to me that I couldn't even explain why it wouldn't work very well. But go on.
yeah, it's one of the challenges of being really, really good at your craft, and not just that, being a natural at your craft often makes it hard to explain it. Like I've like basically I found this is a tangent on a tangent that I found people who are amazing at something fall into one of two categories. They're natural at it or they're just like self-taught through like obsessive discipline. And I've consistently found that the people who are naturally good at anything are the worst at explaining it, while the people who are self-taught through discipline and hard work like I and reach just as good as a level as the natural are great at explaining. And my fun metaphor that I like for that is talking to my guy friends about picking up girls. You ask like a guy that's just naturally great at picking up girls, who's just like sexy and beautiful and naturally charming, and you ask him, hey, how do you pick up girls? He's like, just be yourself. And while the person who's just like fat and ugly and just terrible at picking up girls, but he had to like figure out, exactly how to be charming, etc. He'll be like, oh yeah, these sorts of things people find charming and so on. So my tangent on it being hard for you to explain is it just shows that you're natural at your craft. Um,
Unconsciously competent.
Unconsciously competent.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love it. But that's the tangent on the tangent. So the point that I was getting at was, oh yes, you reached this point of fundamental disagreement. And
Yeah.
something that I found in all client work is if it reaches a point where there's this deep, deep, deep disagreement, you can kind of just never recover from that. And even on like a personal fight, like even on just like purely business strategic level, like a strategic level, when it's such a deep disagreement on, oh, we should do the UI like this or this wildly different strategy like that, that you can never recover from that point.
To use your picking up people of the opposite sex or same sex or whatever turns you on, um, maybe another element of being a natural. What happened to me is I became absolutely enraged with the passion of a thousand suns. I had a
Interesting. And
really hard time keeping myself calm in these conversations. I did for a long time. And then there was a moment where it got so illogical to me that it caused a lizard brain rage response. Maybe, that enragement comes with people who are naturals too. Maybe you have an idea about that. I don't know. But and maybe it's less so with people who don't run into that wall. I don't know. It's a theory.
But by the way, I've actually found people who are, let's say, people equally competent, equally amazing, natural versus self-taught through discipline, hard work. I found that the naturals, and this is just my personal experience, far from an expert on this, the naturals tend to be more emotional about it
Yeah,
because it's a part of their identity.
it's a
While the people
passion.
who just learned it, yeah, I just like had a lot of discipline and hard work, and this is what I figured out. So it's easier for them to be dispassionate about it.
So there was an earlier project that I had too, and I had this phrase that I use, which is I can't break the laws of physics for you. In the previous contract, they said, well, I don't see why I can't get the entire user interface done in 3 weeks because outsourcing and fast and the mythical man month and all of that stuff. And I said, I finally came to this point after talking to my friends and colleagues about this crazy world, upside down world I found myself in, that in which case you just say, okay, go do that. Because what you're asking me to do is breaking the laws of physics. It's like, to me, I literally physically cannot do that for you, no matter how much you argue that it should be possible. And you can't see how it's not possible. I cannot give it to you. Right. And so I think that came into play too, where I suddenly was realizing when I did, which I hadn't reached this point with other clients
Right,
until
right,
now.
right.
I reached this point of no return. You're right, it's no return. I think the trust is broken. I think for me, I'm too old for this shit kicks in. And I get angry at them like I get angry at stupid younger people. And, it's like get off my lawn and up yours and all of those good, much more colorful than that. But I just, it's also an element of confidence to say, you may think this is correct. I cannot give this to you. So I got fired. I've never been fired from. And believe me, it was more like, well, I don't think we're going to be able to work together anymore, which officially is. And I'm like, absolutely agree. And I was like, see ya. So it was a land that I had not visited before. And I visited many times over the years since then in the world of blockchain and AI.
Okay, so question: is there anything you could have done differently to that in retrospect now to say, you had you done X, Y, Z, there could have been a happy ending, or was it one of these cases where it was doomed from the beginning?
That is a fantastic question. I don't think there's anything I could have done. There may be something that some other senior UX person could have done or senior advisor could have done. Me, no. And what ended up happening is I wrote this cute article, which is, why Web3 interfaces will suck for a while. And it has this, the one thing I could have done is said no at the beginning. And so the idea I have, and this is the pre-disastered founder, what I realized from this is that there are certain founders that I have to say no to from the get-go before we even get started. If it's a founder so there's old movie called The World According to Garp. It was a Robin Williams movie. It's also a great novel. And long story short, the young man, Garp, and his wife are searching for a house. They see this beautiful Cape Cod house. And as they're looking at it with the realtor, you hear in the distance a single engine plane sputtering. And it crashes into the side of this home. And then, everybody ducks and covers. And then the pilot like peeks out of the now broken to hell second floor and goes, "Everybody okay?" And Robin Williams jumps up and screams, "We'll take it." And his wife is like, "Are you crazy?" And he said, "It's pre-disastered. What are the chances that that's going to happen again?" Right. And so for me, I took that image of the pre-disastered founder and said to myself, unless they have been through the failure that comes with getting over your skis in this way, with not thinking about users, with not having to trying to be the first over the finish line and failing, unless they have had a certain number of failures, I am not the right person to help them, because fundamentally I'm somebody who slows you down to speed you up. And you're only going to be tolerant of that if you know the cost of speeding.
I love it. I have a tangent on or a fun observation on that, nothing to do with our core subject, but on the using a movie reference from the world according to Garp, ages you and me as being a Gen X,
Sure.
which I think is pretty funny now that they're like a whole bunch of generations after us. And I don't quote movies. I quote some Gen X movies. I like know like Heather's by heart. Um, but
Repo Man, that was early for us.
yeah. And also quote a lot of Gen X music. Like I like so often in business cases, like Pink Floyd lyrics that are relevant to everything in life. And I was just thinking the other day, like we're reaching the point, if we're not there now, where like Pink Floyd, U2, etc. is like old man music. So I feel
Yeah,
like I need to like come up with a whole new generation of
classic rock.
references. Classic
Yeah,
rock,
so
but
our rebellion is now classic soft rock. And I don't know if you ever look at TikTok or Instagram, but there was a whole set of memes going around about Gen X. Like, don't fuck with Gen X, because these are the kids that came home alone. Do you know where your children are? Commercials at 10 p.m. because
I
who
remember those
knows where your kids
commercials.
are? Right? This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. We're seen as kind of a like, don't poke the bear because Gen X is badass and they will come for you. That's the reputation we have. I like it.
Dude,
Yeah.
in terms of generational reputations, I think it's the best one out there.
Oh, me too. Absolutely. It doesn't matter that we're crotchety and old now. Fuck it.
On the story, there are a few other angles that might be worth dissecting. Let's continue down this path of the some founders you just need to say no to beforehand. What are the, let's say, risk factors that you look for in someone now, where you're like, oh no, like if it's one of these six boxes that are checked, then you're out of there before it starts.
It's interesting because for me, that's been a reckoning in my career. Like, I love early stage startups. I love ADD founders. I love people with, more passion than they have experience. Like, I've done that so many, and sometimes there are founders who have been through it before, or find a co-founder who has had enough experience to sort of calm them down. To answer your question, though, right now, I think disruptive tech, even though I'm so good at making disruptive tech make sense to people, which is the key to blockchain, a key to AI. All of that stuff is just, do ordinary people understand it? It's not a good place for me, especially now. I had a fantastic conversation today with my colleague, brilliant guy, Mark Wieman, and he was saying, you know what, I think 0 to 1 is dead because of AI. You can get from 0 to 1 in minutes with an AI tool, meaning you can get from idea to a working product. That's what 0 to 1 means. And there's a whole field in UX and strategy that focuses on 0 to 1, early stage startups. That's me. But now that doesn't make sense for me anymore because, especially with AI, the speed at which you can run is so fast that you can get to something that looks like it might be successful. And that is not the moment for me to tell you to slow down. And we just discussed this today on our walk. The moment to tell you to slow down is where you've launched it. You realize you're one of a million just like you, and you may have a couple people interacting with you, but you can't figure out how to make it grow. You can't figure out how to get people to stick with it. You can't get people to figure out how to leave their familiar app for your app, right? It's after 1, after 0 to 1, after the 1, now in history, that literally in 2025 and on, that's where I can help. Because if they are in highly disruptive tech and they want to do this super ridiculously fast ideation and prototyping, they're not going to they're not going to hear anything I have to say. So there's another story that I told you. It was a very brief one. When I worked at Amazon, it's the Jeff story. There was a rule at Amazon. It makes total sense that it was a much smaller company then. If you were going to have a meeting with Jeff, first, you showed him exactly what he asked for. Even if you thought it was the dumbest thing, could be a hippopotamus on the homepage. You would show him a drawing of the hippopotamus on the homepage. Then and only then would you show him the ideas that you thought were better. Because if you show them the idea you think is better first, all they're thinking about is the hippopotamus. And I think the same is true with early stage founders and disruptive tech, especially now that it's so fast. All they can think about is the hippopotamus. Until they show themselves the hippopotamus, they build it in 10 minutes or whatever with codeless AI, whatever. Until they do that, that's all they can think about. And they're sure it's going to be perfect. And I don't
So
even want to bother trying to convince them otherwise.
I love it. That is a great insight. With my question, I meant to go in a slightly different direction,
Great.
which is
Sorry about that
more.
then.
Love the story. It's a great insight story. Just being for everyone watching this, we're filling up with lots of great insights. So and tangents make things fun and worth doing. So it's all cool. Where I meant to go was this breakdown you had with the founders that started from this fundamental disagreement that came up, and then from there just escalated emotionally and communication wise, resulting in you being fired. Did it leave you with a clear idea of the personality type of clients to avoid? These people would just never listen to me. Easy example that may or may not apply to that. I found in my career, sometimes you just meet people who from the first meeting just talk and talk and talk and talk and don't want to listen to a thing. And
Mhm.
the people that talk and talk and talk and like don't even let you talk, or when you do talk, just like interpret your ideas to just support what they were trying to say rather than actually listening. Like those are the sort of disaster types to work with. So I'm wondering if in this story, if there are any characteristics of these founders that made you realize, here's a type of person that isn't a good fit for you in the future.
I mean, under everything you just said, I just agree with and just would +1 all over it. I mean, it's in a way, it's founder diligence.
Plus one all over it. You would do the thumbs up emoji to
Thumbs
what I
up
just said.
emoji. Yeah. And now, I'm not a great salesperson or marketing person. I mean, I should be a lot wealthier than I am and a lot busier than I am, but that's not me. I don't really know how to. So, what I do when I sell and I have early conversations with these founders is I do see how they interact with me. I have to get them past pitch mode. So, they're so in pitch mode, right? Because they just came from raising money that they have to do their pitch or they can't get past it. So, I let them do that. And then I talk to them and I ask them questions like, what's worrying you? Like, what's going to break your company down? And then I start talking about things like founder and team alignment. And sometimes there's this quiet moment and they go, and I'm scared, I'm nervous. I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. And they go, that's exactly our problem. Or I have to have you talk to Jim or whatever. Sometimes they just rattle on and say, no, 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 we don't need to do that. We're super clear on everything. We just need you to draw it out, which I don't do anyway. And I listen to, I mean, people will tell you who they are if you let them. You just have to believe them. Same thing in dating. People tell you who they are. And if they can't get, I'll give them some time to pitch at me because that's what they're used to doing. But then how much are they able to listen? Are they able to repeat, just like I will repeat back to them what they just said. Like I say, "Oh, okay, hold on, let me, what I just heard," I say this a dozen times every call I have. Okay, so what I just heard you say is X, empathic listening, right? I'll see if they do that. So what you're saying is why? And I mean, it's you said it much simpler than I, which is just like, what kind of person is this? How much of a speed racer are they? How full of their own bullshit are they? And
But
are they even interested in help? If so, what kind?
But by the way, I've developed a whole bunch of techniques of my own over the years on to where I try to identify what kind of a person they are, and and one thing that's gotten me far is building on what you're saying is I really take what people say about themselves at face value, and doubly so, exponentially so when they make jokes about themselves and like when people kind of insult themselves, they haha, just joking. That's actually where the strongest truth comes out. Here's a fun personal-ish almost story that just happened recently where I've had a great employee for years. First time I met this employee's wife, in the very first conversation a few years ago, she made, and I don't even remember the context of it, we were just like hanging out socially. She years ago made the comment that's come like saying, I don't really like to do anything. I just like to sit on my couch and tell other people to do things. And we're like, ha, whatever, we're all drinking. So it's like a
Yeah.
ha 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 fun story. Fast forward a few years, we need to hire someone else to do a bunch of administrative stuff. And the employee was like, oh, my wife would be great at this. And and I hired her. And guess what? Her joke about herself from years over was the best predictor of her behavior.
Yeah, I think another thing that's interesting about like just ordinary human interaction stuff is like this is a tangent too, but I only realized recently that teasing is is cruel and that there's a lot of harmfulness in teasing. And I would tease people and I have a fast brain, so I would make snarky remarks or whatever. But a sharp tongue can hurt other people, even if you feel like you're just joking or you're just teasing. So unless there is some kind of contract, like with maybe a couple or something, and they're used to each other, I'm much more careful now not to
You know,
tease.
this is quite removed from our original topic, but super interesting. So it's a great way to wrap up and finish our episode. Which is
Sure.
recently I've kind of come to the opposite conclusion. So I want to tell you what I've been thinking about teasing just recently, and then we can probably synthesize our two viewpoints, and then it's a fun note to wrap up on,
Sure.
which is I grew up in a world without teasing. Like all my friends growing up were like the super intellectual Jewish nerds, and like everything was super overanalyzed. So like this is kind of all I do now, and how I grew up. So I grew up in a world without that classic guy teasing. Only as an adult, in the especially were sort of friends I've made as adults, especially friends I made in South America, where the culture is different. And now that a lot of my friends are much more businessy types who were like the classic frat boy types who I never interacted with growing up because I couldn't stand them. Like what I found is that the way so many people communicate to each other is through teasing, where they have a sort of criticism, but they can't find a way to say it directly. They're not eloquent or self-aware enough, but maybe to say it simply, teasing is like the guy way of helping your friends improve by using teasing as the excuse to say the thing that you think they need to hear, so that they can improve themselves. And while I don't tease, I used to get really annoyed when people tease me. I thought it was like a sort of cruel way of putting me down. But my more recent thinking is that is their less articulate, less Jewish way of of kind of messaging to me, like about my own bugs and my minor bugs in my personality that I might want to be introspective on to try to improve.
Well, I think I mean, I agree with you. Here's why I agree with you. You're somebody who takes an experience, an emotional or physiological or intellectual or social experience, and you're like, I'm going to pull this apart and look at every little piece of it under a
Totally,
microscope.
totally.
And you analyze it in relation to all of the other relationships you have in your life, communication patterns, your history, your wishes, your writings, your books, whatever, and you contextualize it and you analyze it and you don't just receive it. And what
Yes.
I'm saying is that for many people who don't, I mean, I think part of being a fast brain is that you notice things quickly, like, oh, looks like you're a pink shirt fan because you're always wearing pink shirt, whatever it is, right? And it's easy to spew that out, but it's important to remember that that can hurt on the other side, even though you think you're just playing. It I think for you, you're like, oh, let's look at the context. This is a bunch of brohams who don't really know how to communicate. What are they really saying? Oh, maybe I take this as the kind of a debugging thing. Isn't that fascinating? It's like looking at a bunch of wasps as a Jew and saying, look at the way they interact over. Like, why are they wearing madras for God's sake? And what's with the golf? And analyzing it. So I'm not sure that everybody is as has as available to them the ability to sort of contextualize and broaden and intellectualize. And so then I'm not saying they're not smart. I'm just saying that it can sting. And so I didn't realize that enough in my life, in my
Yeah,
communications.
when I think about teasing, this story that I remember, and this is also TMI for everyone listening to it, but I don't care. Um, when I was in college, I had a college friend who one day, for fun, um, cut out on paper those footsteps. So paper
Yeah.
footsteps leading from the main entrance from the dorm, going up the stairs, down the hallway into to my room, and on each footstep he put a different sexual disease. Uh, P.S. I have zero sexual diseases, and
Yeah.
I was so nerdy. I didn't even know what girls were. But I came into the dorm one day and I saw this, and I was so embarrassed and humiliated. I took all of them, took all of them away. It was wasn't there for more than 2 hours or something,
Because
and I got
it hurt. You didn't
it
know how to
hurt.
process it. You were a younger version of you. That's all I'm
It
saying.
hurt
Is
me.
today you'd look at that and you're like, I wonder why they put chlamydia before gonorrhea.
No, exactly. So I was hurt, and I didn't know how to process it out. And this was freshman year of college. So I was 18. So however, now I'm 49. So I don't want to calculate how many years it's been. The number will be too high. But now I interpret that. I'm like, dude, this is a sign of friendship. It's that he really likes me. Dude, he thinks I'm cool, and he thinks I'm dating lots of girls. Today I said, okay, how do I make that even funnier? And
Right.
today and then I would also do analysis. Why would he be doing it? But I would just interpret it in such a positive way and take it to the next level. And I
He may have been
and
intimidated by what he saw as your sexual conquests. Whether or not you had any at that point, I don't know. But maybe he had less than none. Who knows? Right?
who exactly who knows? Although I'm LinkedIn friends with him, so I could ask him. Do you remember that moment?
You should. And also, okay, so just because you're looping, so looping it back around, this is
Please.
looking at the way other people are seeing things in business too. And there's like that, there's also this idea. I'd love to share this one more idea, which is this puzzle
Please.
perspective idea. So there's this TV show called The Diplomat. It's a fantastic show. And in one of the episodes, it is about a diplomat, a woman who is super intelligent and gets put into England as the diplomat from the United States. And she is undergoing all these machinations that you can imagine, spy show stuff. And she's working hard to keep this one little thing from happening in the UK that's going to hurt some people or put the blame on someone, right? And she's trying to untangle all the politics of it. The VP from the United States comes to visit her and storms in after some gala and walks up to a map and says, "This is your game board," and circles the UK. "You're all worried about this one little piece here and the diplomatic implications and the spy and who's going to get hurt." And then she leans back and she circles the entire world. And she said, "This is my game board. And if you follow through with poking at all of this details in here, you're going to put an entire set of countries at risk that is far bigger than you can imagine because of the interrelationships of whatever, right?" And I call that now puzzle perspective, right? And I think it's true of consultants. I think it's true of people on teams. And I think it's true when we think about our executive team. Their puzzle is a different scale, or our client. Their puzzle is a different scale and a different perspective than ours. We come in as experts on what we do, and we're sure we're right, and we have universe in a grain of sand amount of knowledge about our particular piece. Puzzle perspective says, remember where they're coming from. What was going on in the head of the guy who did the footprints with chlamydia on them going up to your dorm room? Like, that's an interesting, fascinating puzzle problem. Why did he do that? Right? Versus the immediate reaction of ripping them up and throwing them in the trash can. So to me, and I'm all about alignment now in my work, I want to get more into bigger companies who they don't quite realize yet that that's the problem. I actually think, when you are ready to hire a senior executive, it's exactly the wrong time to hire that executive, because you're probably hiring them to solve a problem that's an argument that doesn't need another senior voice. And I mean, like, this goes on and on. But that being able to see the way they see things, and in this case, we're saying if a founder is so stuck in their ways and so excited about themselves and so stuck on the hippopotamus and the homepage, then that's not a battle to choose. You don't try to change it. In some cases, you do try to change it. So that's the way I connect all this stuff together.
I love it, and we know it's a good episode because the end of the episode wrapped back to the points in the in early in the episode. So it's a sign the viewers are going to love this one. Tamara, it's been so much fun hanging out, becoming friends, and everyone who's made it this far. Thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. And everyone who's made it this far, I hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as we've had making this episode. Until next time.
Thanks. Just in case it's possible, I mean, can I throw in a comment about Corporate Underpants, the podcast?
Absolutely, everyone. If you're still watching, we have an awesome self-promotional PS. Go for it.
Yeah. So if you like this kind of thinking, my podcast is called Corporate Underpants. It's about the visible panty lines of product when politics and personalities and puzzle perspective get skewed. That's what keeps us from launching great products. It's not that we don't know how. It's that the Greek gods are sending tornadoes through our projects. If you're interested in that kind of conversation, I'd love it if you would tune in to Corporate Underpants.
Sounds great, and we can also put a link in the podcast notes as
Thank you
well.
so much. Thanks, Morgan.
Thank you, everyone. Until next time.